Here's something wild. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, you're surrounded by products from companies you've never heard of. Think about your morning. You brush your teeth. The bristles on that brush, the plastic, the minty foam, were probably made with chemicals from a supplier nobody talks about. You charge your phone, and the tiny components inside it came from a factory whose name will never appear on a billboard. We tend to think the world is run by the brands we see, Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike. But behind almost every famous brand sits a quieter company that actually makes the stuff. These are the invisible giants, and once you learn to spot them, you can't unsee them. Why does this matter to you? Because the real power in business often isn't where the logo is. It's hidden one step back, in the part nobody photographs. Let me explain how this actually works with a simple picture. Imagine a famous chocolate bar. The brand on the wrapper doesn't grow cocoa, doesn't make the foil, doesn't build the machine that wraps it. Instead, they buy from a supplier. And here's the twist. That supplier buys from another supplier. There can be 5 or 6 hidden layers before you reach the company that mines the raw stuff or runs the giant chemical plant. Each layer adds a little, then hands it up the chain. The closer a company is to the raw materials, the more invisible it usually is, and often the more essential. It's like a relay race where only the last runner crosses the camera, but the first runner did the hardest part. The lesson for you is this. When you wonder who really controls an industry, don't look at the brand. Follow the chain backwards until you hit a company that almost nobody can replace. Now picture the most boring product imaginable. Salt, not the table kind you sprinkle on fries, but industrial salt, the raw chemical building block. It sounds dull, but salt is split into chlorine and a substance called caustic soda, and those two things quietly make modern life possible. Chlorine cleans your water and goes into the PVC pipes in your walls. Caustic soda helps make paper, soap, aluminum, and even the aluminum can your drink comes in. A handful of giant chemical companies run plants the size of small towns, turning ordinary salt into the invisible ingredients of everything. You will never see their name on a shelf because they don't sell to you. They sell to the people who sell to the people who sell to you. And here's why it matters. The most profitable spot in a market is often the least glamorous one, the unsexy raw ingredient that everyone above you absolutely needs. Let's go even smaller. Inside almost every electronic thing you own, your phone, your laptop, your earbuds, your car, there are thousands of tiny components called capacitors. A capacitor is basically a microscopic battery that stores a tiny burst of energy and smooths out the flow of electricity, like a shock absorber for power. A single smartphone can hold close to 1,000 of them. And here's the surprising part. A small group of companies, many in Japan, make a huge share of the world's best ones. They're so small you can barely see them with your eyes, yet without them, your devices would glitch, overheat, or simply not turn on. You've touched billions of these in your life and never known. The takeaway is humbling. The thing that controls an industry isn't always big and dramatic. Sometimes it's a speck of metal and ceramic that a few quiet companies have spent decades learning to make better than anyone else. Now, here's the part almost nobody notices, and it flips the whole story. You'd assume these companies stay hidden because they're small or shy. The opposite is true. Many of them choose to be invisible because invisibility is their superpower. Think about it. If you're a household brand, customers can get angry at you, boycott you, demand lower prices. But if you're the secret supplier 3 layers back, you face none of that. You're not in the headlines, you're not in the gossip. You just quietly collect a slice of every single sale your customers make. Some of these backstage companies are more profitable than the famous brands they supply. They win whether the front-facing brand is Apple or Samsung because both buy from them. It's like owning the only bridge into a city. You don't care which trucks drive across, you charge them all. So the real lesson is counterintuitive. Being unknown isn't a weakness here. It's the entire strategy, and it's quietly genius. Real quick, if you've made it this far, I'm guessing you're finding this as fascinating as I do. This channel breaks down how money and technology really work in a new video every week. If that's useful to you, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss one. It genuinely helps us make more. Okay, back to it. So how do they become impossible to replace? Usually with a secret recipe and decades of patience. Take specialty chemicals, the coatings, glues, and films inside your screen and your packaging, making them sound simple until you try. The exact mix, the precise temperature, the order you add things, all of it is guarded knowledge built up over 50 or 60 years of trial and error. A rival can buy the same raw materials and still fail because they don't know the 1,000 tiny tricks. It's like your grandmother's bread. Same flour, same oven, but somehow yours never tastes the same. That gap is the moat, the thing keeping competitors out. These companies pour money into research, file mountains of patents, and train workers for years. By the time a competitor catches up, the leader has already moved further ahead. For you, the insight is simple. Lasting business power rarely comes from being loud. It comes from knowing something hard that took a very long time to learn. Here's the dangerous side, and you may have lived through it without knowing the cause. Because so few companies make these critical parts, if just one factory has a problem, the whole world feels it. Imagine a single plant that makes a special chemical needed for car airbags or computer chips. A fire, a flood, or a shutdown at that one site, and suddenly car makers across the planet can't finish their cars. That's not a wild story, it has actually happened. When chip and component shortages hit, new cars sat half-built in lots, prices jumped, and you waited months for things that used to take days. The invisible giant is efficient, but efficiency means there's almost no backup. We built a world that runs on a handful of irreplaceable suppliers, and most people never noticed until the shelves went empty. The lesson for you: hidden power is also hidden risk. When one quiet company controls something everyone needs, the whole system is only as strong as that single link. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. Who actually holds the power in the economy? We assume it's the brands with the loud ads and the famous founders. But power, real power, is the ability to say no and to be impossible to walk away from. The brand can be replaced. If one phone maker stumbles, you just buy a different phone. But if the company making a key ingredient inside every phone stumbles, there is no different phone. That's leverage. These backstage giants can quietly raise prices, set the terms, and shape entire industries, all without a single customer knowing their name. It's a strange kind of power, the kind that never has to show its face, and it reshapes how you should look at the world. Next time a famous company brags about its products, ask yourself a quiet question. Who do they depend on? Because the company they can't live without is usually the one with the real control, sitting calmly in the shadows. Here's where it gets bigger than factories. This pattern, the invisible essential layer, is everywhere once you train your eye. The cloud company that hosts the apps you use every day. The payment network that quietly takes a tiny cut of nearly every card swipe on Earth. The shipping containers and the few companies that move them across oceans. The maps and data that other apps secretly run on top of. In every case, the famous name in front is standing on an invisible giant behind. And the giant often makes more, complains less, and lasts longer. It's the same chocolate bar story, just in a different costume. Once you see it in salt and capacitors, you start seeing it in software, in finance, in shipping, in food. The world is full of front stages and back stages, and the backstage is where a surprising amount of the money and the power quietly lives. So here's what this really means for you. The next time you pick up your phone, sip your coffee, or sit in your car, take 1 second to wonder who made the parts you'll never see. Because the brand is only the tip of an enormous iceberg, and the part underwater is doing most of the work. This isn't just trivia, it's a new lens. When you understand that the real power often sits one quiet step back from the spotlight, you start asking smarter questions about every company, every product, and even every job. You stop being dazzled by the loud name and start noticing who that name depends on. The invisible giants aren't a secret because they're hiding from you. They're invisible because we were taught to only look at the front of the store. Now you know to look behind it. And honestly, Isn't it kind of wonderful that the world is far stranger and more connected than it first appears? Keep that curiosity. It's worth more than any single fact. Thanks so much for watching. If you got value from this, hit like, share it with someone who'd find it interesting, and subscribe for a new breakdown every week. And follow us on Instagram at zavrek.official for more. See you in the next one.